Transition Bay St. Margaret's has been doing programs now for 10 full years. We're celebrating a decade of helping people build resilience in the face of a very rapidly changing future. We're part of the International Transition Town movement, which started not much over 15 years ago in a little town in England, and now has spread across the globe in over 50 countries. And I think it's about 1,500 different transition towns, but there's also many unofficial transition towns, what we would say places that are doing the work of a transition town under a different name. And so we have a lot of groups that are permaculture groups, and they're closely aligned with transition. Transition grew out of the idea of what would happen if we applied permaculture information and approaches to the world of our community. So that's what we're doing. Now, we don't have any programs lined up for the rest of the spring, but we're going to have a meeting really soon, and we'll be finalizing some programs, I'm sure. So please sign up for our email list if you'd like to be notified of these. And that would be at info@transitionbay.ca, info@transitionbay.ca, and you could go to our webpage, which is transitionbay.ca. Euphonious, it's easy to remember. So we'll be announcing more. This is the first time we don't have a lineup already decided, but we plan to keep on live streaming these, or Zooming them and recording them, and we'll keep on producing programs for you.
Fantastic.
So, whoops, who are they? Just turn off your, please mute. Okay. So everyone please mute their audio. Someone's on an iPhone with their audio. Okay, thank you. Now, we're really excited tonight to have Savannah Jerome as our featured speaker. Savannah is someone that I keep hearing about from all sorts of people who are taking her programs on medicinal herbs, and both in growing and wild harvesting, and on using as well. So she's going to give us an introduction tonight. And so Savannah's been on the plant path for about 30 years. And she has a herbal clinic and a dispensary for herbs in Halifax, and operates the Bloom Institute for Herbal Studies. And this getting together people and plants is her favorite thing to do. And she looks forward to workshops in the future with Transition Bay, which we do too. And together, we want you to explore the medicinal plants growing in and out of your gardens, and how to make your homemade preparations for basic herbal self-care. And I would say that this program is co-sponsored by the Bloom Institute for Herbal Studies. Now, that is something that you can reach at Bloom Institute for Holistic Living and Learning at 989 Young Avenue in Halifax. You can call them at 902-957-1634 and write them at info@bloominstitute.ca, and her webpage is bloominstitute.ca. So after the talk, Savannah will answer questions. So, but if she wants to entertain questions during the talk, she will, maybe she can say that herself. So, Savannah, please take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Thank you to Melanie there in the background, also helping out. I will speak to that. I am open to questions and conversation in the flow of what I want to share tonight. So, Melanie, if you're up to it, if you put the questions in the chat box, maybe Melanie could read some of them out, if that works.
Absolutely.
Does that work, Melanie?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like the questions in the flow, but if they all pile up at the end too, that's great. And if you're used to this Zoom platform, you also could raise your hand to gain extra attention if you'd like to voice your question. Okay, well, I will just add a little to what David shared about me. I see a few familiar names here, but so I'll just give you a bit of my background. As David said, I have been on the herbal path for 30 years, and I owe it all to Monty Python. I was living in London, England for 2 years, and when I was 20, and my travel partner at the time was a huge fan of Monty Python. And so he took me to Covent Garden. There's a little courtyard off of Covent Garden called Neil's Yard. And that's where Monty Python have their headquarters. So while he was busy, photographing the Monty Python office, I had some time to pass. So I aimlessly wandered into a little herbal shop called Neil's Yard Remedies. And that changed my life. I was an aimless backpacker from Sheet Harbor, Nova Scotia, had no intentions of finding my life path at that moment, but I sure did. I spent an hour in that little tiny shop, just going around in circles, taking in, the herb jars, the herb bundles hanging from the ceiling. There was literature, herbal books, herbal people, herbal folks. So I absorbed a lot in that hour, and with the striking realization that herbal medicine has always been a form of medicine and still was at the time and still is. And that just blew me to bits. And I knew with absolute clarity in that moment that I wanted to be a herbalist. It made sense on every aspect of my being. So I walked out that door on the herbal path. I pursued some introductory herbal study while I still lived in London, and had a bit of traveling left to do. So I went to India, Nepal, and Thailand, where traditional herbal medicine was very strong. And I got quite sick with amoebic dysentery in India. And I had a lingering digestive chronic illness that followed me home. And so home at that time was to move to BC to study herbal medicine. At that time, there were 3 prominent herbal colleges. And when I landed in BC, I sought out the herbalists at Gaia Garden Herbals, and I attended their student training clinic, and they fixed me up. Well, and I should say the herbs fixed me up. Within about 6 weeks after taking, marshmallow root powder, tinctures, teas, and adjusting my diet, I recovered from what became a pretty nagging, lingering digestive issue. So that was a great way to start on my herbal learning, which was to apply it, to actually have that proving. And I've had it many, many times since. Here I am 30 years later. And I completed my 4 years of clinical herbal training in BC. I was very fortunate to work at Gaia Garden Herbals. If any of you are from Vancouver, you might know that little herb shop. I learned on the job, surrounded by other wonderful herbalists. And then I moved back home to Nova Scotia almost 20 years ago. And I set up a clinical practice in Halifax and started teaching classes and leading herb walks. And I must say, I really love sharing my enthusiasm for herbal medicine and passing on the knowledge. So I'm really happy to be here with you tonight. And I like the word resilience. I like that as a step off point, David, and what your group is all about. Because herbal medicine truly is a powerful aspect of building resilience. It is an accessible um, effective, safe, expansive version of medicine. And no matter where we're from on this planet, we have a cultural connection to herbal healing. And some of those connections may have faded over, the past 100 years or so, but those herbal connections are still alive and becoming even more celebrated over the past at least 30 years as I've witnessed herbal medicine grow here in Canada. So resilience building. We have access to herbs just right outside our door. I've counted 250 wild medicinal plants in Nova Scotia. That's wild, edible, and medicinal plants. And so they are, there, for our benefit. And then, of course, as gardeners, you also know that you have the power to cultivate your own food and herbal medicine gardens. So by tending to our health and nourishing ourselves with good food and with herbs, we build resilience on so many levels. So that's some of what I hope to explore with you this evening. We'll talk a bit about herb gardening and also wildcrafting, the herbs that are outside the borders of our gardens, and then some basic herbal preparations that are really easy to make at home, and just some other aspects of gardening and such. Okay, so are we good to continue? If I bring up my slides, Melanie, everything sound okay so far?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so I have some slides to share. So I'm gonna drift in and out of the slides, and I'm gonna bring those up right now. Okay, so can you see the slide?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, actually, I'm just going to hop into a different version of that. Here we go. Okay, there. Okay. Okay. So just getting the slideshow going. Okay, just give me here for 1 second while I get the slideshow up and running. Okay, so can you see my first slide here? Healing garden.
Yep, you're good.
Great. Okay. So as gardeners, I'm going to assume that you all know that the act of gardening itself is healing. So regardless of what we put in our gardens, the act of being in there and being with the plants and getting our hands in the soil is healing in and of itself. And I've got a couple of studies here proving what we all know, and a glimpse at therapeutic horticulture. So horticulture, we can study that as a therapeutic medium to share with others, and it is the purposeful use of plants and plant-related activities to promote health and wellness for an individual or group. So right there, we see that just being together in the garden, one of the determinants of health is connection and being connected to other folks in the garden. So it's wonderful to garden together. And we've got a PubMed study here backing that up, showing that, looking through various studies on gardening, they confirm that gardening can improve physical, psychological, social, and social health. And this can alleviate and prevent various health issues facing today's society. So again, that's just the act of being in the garden. So right there, that's a valuable tool to build resilience. And as gardeners, you may have some of your own favorite garden quotes. I've got a couple of mine here. So never underestimate the healing power of a quiet moment in the garden. If I saw your heads, maybe I'd see some nods of agreement. Help us to be ever faithful gardeners of the spirit, who know that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, and without light, nothing flowers. So there are a lot of wonderful metaphors around being in the garden. In the spring, at the end of the day, you should smell like dirt. And the next one points to the labor of being in the garden. So, there is definitely work involved. I'm sure you all know the weeding, the watering, the tending is good work, but it definitely requires effort. And having a garden is like having a good and loyal friend. So that's the way I feel right now. I recently moved to the Eastern Shore of Nova Scotia. I'm 2 years into my current garden, and I feel like it's my sanctuary. So just spending time there really does bring peace to my being. So it is a blessing to have a garden. I've been gardening on and off for 20 or so years as a gypsy gardener, moving from home to home or tapping into generosity in other gardens. So I have 2 years of solid gardening in one spot under my belt this year. And as you all know, there's so much to learn and so many advances, especially when we contemplate permaculture and all the principles that we can pull in from there. It's an ongoing learning opportunity. So yeah, and then when creating a herbal garden or any garden, I guess we set our intentions. So do we just simply want this garden to be a place to escape and enjoy those quiet moments? Are we growing food for our family and our community? Are we wanting the garden to be a place of beauty? Or are we seeking medicine from our garden? So in particular, herbal medicine, which is my interest. And then with those herbs, are we using them in our cooking? Are we going to process them and make, medicines of various kinds? So that directs, our intentions, what plants to include when we're gardening. And there's, of course, many ways to use the plants as medicine. So we'll go through those later on this evening. And I just want to show you a few pictures of my garden. So I moved here 2 years ago, and the land and the home were quiet for 15 years. No one lived here. So the weeds took over, and we had fields of weeds, goldenrod, dandelion, oh my goodness, clover. So we had lots of weeds that I'm fond of, medicinal weeds. The knapweed was taking over. So as some of you probably can relate, it starting from scratch, bare land, it becomes quite a labor. So there's some of our activities building from scratch there. And this is my garden this year. So we've managed to transform that weedy patch into a productive and beautiful teaching garden and harvest garden for my practice, for my friends and family. And just lastly, the veggie garden. So we fenced it in and built our beds, raised our beds, and we've been nourishing the soil ever since. So that's a little glimpse of my garden. So I didn't get a sense of the gardeners in the group. So I'm just going to stop my share, and through a show of hands, can you just all just give me a sense of who you are and who gardens? Is this a garden club? Are you all gardeners, or is it just some of you? Some. Oh, you're on mute there, David.
So I'm sorry. We're not a gardening club per se. We do more things around gardens than anything else, though. Always around food issues, of course. We do partner with a local gardening club on some programs, and also a local seniors association, and others as we can.
Okay. And how many of you, through a show of hands, are incorporating herbal medicine in your lifestyle, using plants as medicine? How many of you are doing that already?
Sure.
Okay, a little bit. Yes, Susan is. Hi. Yes. I know Melanie is. Claire's wanting to get more medicinal plants in there. Okay, so at least half of you, from what I can see, are familiar with using plants as medicine. And I have a quote that I like to share, which is that nutrition, our sources around nutrition say we should have 6 to 10 fruits and vegetables a day, and I believe we should have 10 herbs a day, in addition to all those plant foods. And that is easily achievable. 10 herbs a day. We can achieve that goal just through simply adding more fresh herbs to our cooking, which is always a pleasure. It enhances our food enjoyment. So adding a few fresh herbs to your food, your meals each day, preparing a herbal tea blend, putting 2 or 3 herbs in a pot, and then perhaps making maybe you're taking a herbal tincture or a herbal vinegar, using a herbal liniment on your skin. So really, and maybe Melanie could back me up on this, including 10 herbs a day isn't that far-fetched once you get into it. And I would like to say that that is my favorite way to promote herbal medicine. Are you getting 10 herbs a day, Melanie?
Absolutely. More than that, thanks to you. So if you hang around with you long enough, you start to see how easy that is, Savayda. It's easy to just pop 5, 6, 7 in a cup of tea, and like you said, vinegars, and I didn't say this at the beginning, but I've done several walks with you, of course, and done your year-long herbal program, which I really highly recommend to everybody. So yeah, you start to see everything around as opportunities to bring more herbs into your daily diet. It's pretty wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And see, the thing with herbal medicine, I guess the word medicine maybe obscures it a little bit. We can use the plants as medicine when we become ill. They help bring us back to balance. And the philosophy of herbal medicine has the belief that we are innately capable of self-regulating, that these bodies are miraculous and we are designed to heal and to self-regulate, and that we need simply give ourselves all the natural ingredients that we need to be well. And so herbal medicine certainly can help bring us back to that center, help the body bring us back to health when needed. But if we incorporate the plants into our daily routine, this then becomes, you could almost consider it preventative, in the way that, ideally we're adding more plant foods to our diet. Fruit and vegetables are very well known to bring us various micronutrients needed for health. Well, the plants, the herbal medicines, as part of the daily routine, I would say, bring resilience, because there are phytochemicals, there are plant chemicals in the herbs that have many activating actions on our cells, on our body systems, and our organs. And so we can gently give a workout to our system with those small, gentle inclusions of those diverse phytochemicals. There's value in variety in the diet, and that includes herbs. When we become sort of in a narrow range, I think North Americans maybe consume within a range of like only 10 fruits and vegetables in their yearly diet. We've really shrunk our range, and with variety we expand into many more phytochemicals that are needed to activate right down to the cellular level. So that's where herbs incorporated into the diet, into your other preparations, really can set off and enhance those valuable maintenance processes in the body. So that is my best way to recommend using herbs. So not to wait until we're ill to bring them in, but that they really do become allies for strength and resilience. And they bring us a connection to nature. I think that's the other key aspect here, is to, I think maybe you're all living rural out there in St. Margaret's Bay, as I am, so it's much easier to have that nature connection when we're surrounded by it. And that's the beauty of herbal medicines. They are a gateway to nature connection, and that in and of itself is healthy. Yeah, and that's, you know, been backed up recently. Maybe you've all heard of forest bathing. This is the new trend, backed up by research out of Japan. You know, where they're measuring the markers of stress before, during, and after outings in the forest. And sure enough, time in nature basically calms the stress response, and then of course the subsequent illnesses that come from chronic stress. So herbal medicine is a good way to engage actively in nature connection, especially with kids. If any of you have children, you'll know that they love to touch and taste and learn. So if you've got like 6 to 10 herbs in your repertoire out there in the wild or in your gardens, if they can participate in getting to know, that's a great way to hone in on their focus around plant medicine. Any comments or questions so far? Anything you want to add or pick up there? No, okay. Okay, very good. So I'm going to go back to my slides and dig into some of the particulars around herbal medicine use. So I'm gathering from your feedback from my question that some of you have some experience with herbal medicine, but that it might be new to others. So I'm just going to cover some basics around herbal medicine. And I'll start with harvesting. Yeah, so just like with our gardens, with our you know, our veggies, there is that optimal time. There's that natural progression of when, you know, plants are ready to harvest, and that just depends on their inherent needs and their own development. And so we follow the pattern of the cycles in regards to harvesting our herbs. And as a general rule, we harvest the leaves in the spring. So when the ground thaws and the first young leaves are beginning to appear, they're at their most potent and vibrant before the flowers start to develop. So if it's you know, leaves of things like nettle and dandelion, you know, violet, you know, if these are the medicines you seek, then you want to be sure to get those in the spring, early on, before the flowers begin. Although some leaves we want to harvest all through the growing season. So I've been, you know, pinching off my flowers to encourage big bushy mint and holy basil leaves, which I will harvest. I'm still using them. I'll use them until early December probably. So we can use certain leaves all through the season, but some require that first spring harvest. Once the flowers begin, so once as summer progresses and the flowers develop, then the energy of the plant is involved in flower production. So the leaves kind of fade in terms of their medicinal potency and aroma and all sorts of things. So so harvesting blooms, flowers like calendula and rose, you know, any of the blooms that we want, we'll get those during their peak just after they open. And there's a succession, a wonderful sort of parade of flowers blooming here in Nova Scotia, whether it's in our gardens or the wild ones, the weeds. And, you know, we have, you know, each week there's a new flower, a new herb to harvest, sometimes 10. It can be very overwhelming, but you want to get your particular blooms when they first open before all those lovely pollinators are there, because they want a piece of the action as well. And so they will take some of that. So we want to get in there and get those flowers when they're just at their peak, freshly open. So that's throughout summer. In the late summer, so that's where we are right now, we harvest the fruits, and then a little later on, the seeds from plants. So you may be noticing the rose hips maturing on those lovely wild roses that we have. I'm harvesting hawthorn berries right now, elderberries right now. So this is the time of the fruit harvest, medicinal fruit harvests. And some of those, we gather the seeds. So the wild carrot seeds, Queen Anne's lace, we'll be gathering those, you know, a few weeks from now when they're mature. So, and then once fall arrives, then we're digging roots. So at that point, as we all know, the above ground parts of the plants are done, they reseed, and then the roots are now holding all that nourishment. They've been storing up that energy from photosynthesis and storing that in their roots to sustain them during their hibernation during the winter. So that's when we would dig up roots to get their maximum medicinal potency. And then we can get the evergreens all throughout the winter. So we've got this full seasonal cycle, and there are exceptions to some of the rules, like for instance, coltsfoot flowers bloom in early spring, we get those. Sometimes we actually want the leaf and flower from the herbs. So with hawthorn leaf and flower, we'll get those when it's in bloom in late May. We just finished the goldenrod season, which you see me harvesting there in my garden. We want the leaf and flower of goldenrod. So again, we'd get all of those together when it's at its peak bloom. So those are the basic harvesting sort of guidelines. And then I mentioned harvest the plants while they're dry. So you want to wait until any morning dew or any rain has dried up and evaporated. So especially if you're planning to dry your herbs, and that's what we're going to talk about next. We never want to, start with additionally wet plants when wanting to dry them for later use. Yeah, those are the basics around harvesting. Again, if you have any questions as I go, be sure to put those in the chat. So those are the.
Sorry, we have a question about goldenrod, actually. The question is from Claire. I was listening to a podcast recently talking about goldenrod. They suggested drying it now for the winter to use. Do you like it for this? For winter, do you like it for this use? If so, how do you use it? Tea, tincture. I'm not sure which use exactly. Winter blues. Sorry, Mike, it was cutting it in chat. So yeah, so Claire is wondering if you like it for winter blues and how you would suggest using it.
Yeah, well, yeah, goldenrod is a wonderfully potent and abundant medicine here. And I was going to talk about it later, but we can mention it now while it's up. So yes, drying it it's an easy plant to dry. It doesn't hold much moisture, so you can successfully dry it just by snipping the stems to the point where as far down as the leaves still look good. Sometimes at the bottom they get tattered. So snip them by the stems, bundle 2 or 3 stems together and just hang them to dry. And we'll talk about drying in a little bit more detail here in a moment. So then they're delicious in tea, but you can also use them fresh. So while they're abundant in their fresh state, they're so delicious. Goldenrod tea, the leaf and flower, is very aromatic. It's slightly bitter, slightly aromatic, very flavorful, and delicious in the tea. And I use it more as an allergy remedy to counter the effects of seasonal allergies, and also as a urinary medicine for bladder infection. It's a diuretic, so it encourages the flow of urine. I use it for urethritis, prostatitis, bladder infections, that sort of thing. And it's also mildly beneficial for digestion. So those would be the main things I would dry it for, and have it on hand for next allergy season. So some people do have allergies at this time of year. I would get it stored up and ready for spring, when that's when most folks tend to have the allergies. And often goldenrod is mislabeled as being what causes seasonal allergies, and it's often confused with ragweed. And I hear this over and over. People believe they have a goldenrod allergy, and maybe in some cases they do. But the thing about goldenrod is it's not airborne. It doesn't pollinate through an airborne mechanism. So it's not so likely, unlike the ragweed, which does, to cause allergies. But having said that, there's always individual responses to herbs of the ordinary. So I just want to clarify that about goldenrod. So drying it does really well as a water extract, and we're going to talk about the various herbal preparations in the next slide. But you could make a tincture with it, or a herbal vinegar, in addition to drying it for tea. Does that answer your questions, Claire? I hope. Okay. Very good to keep going, Melanie?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. So that brings me to the next slide on drying and storage. So we have 10 or so different basic home preparations that you can do with plants. And the starting place is just to simply dry them and keep them on hand to either add to your cooking or to make teas with later on, or to make other preparations with later on. So the drying stage is pretty critical. There are herbal preparations that involve, harvesting the plant while fresh and using that right away. And we'll talk about that in a moment. In particular, tinctures are a great way to use fresh plants. But if you start with a good base with your dried plants, then you have many other things that you can build on from there. So I mentioned earlier to start with dried plants. So don't harvest when they're wet, rain, and dew. And pick them at their peak harvesting time. And then they basically need warmth, shade, and ventilation. So they don't want direct sunlight. So you want to keep them away from your windows or not outside, but give them basic warmth and some shade and good airflow. And, in Nova Scotia, because we have very high humidity, drying can be difficult. And I have success drying, but sometimes not 100% success. So it really just depends on how humid your environment is. And you can, use various methods. You can do the bundle hanging method that I mentioned. You can put blooms in baskets, or you can make your own drying racks. You can stretch screens between chairs, get creative with all kinds of, screen and mesh type constructs for making your own drying racks. You could hang them near wood stoves or other heat sources to give them that warmth, which is always helpful. And there's varying, times with the drying process. I would say a dehydrator is helpful for the wet fleshy plants. So things like roots and fruits, like I would always use a dehydrator for my burdock root or my rose hips, because they will mold and turn black before they actually get a chance to dry completely. And that's true for some fleshy leaves as well, things like coltsfoot leaves and marshmallow leaves. They're inherently quite wet, so they would benefit from a dehydrator as well. So and then the time it takes, anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks to dry your leaves and flowers. My calendula blossoms dried in about 2 weeks this year. Roots and berries and fruits and things take a bit longer because they're inherently more wet, but a dehydrator overnight will do the trick. And you want to avoid the disappointment of opening a bag of moldy herbs. So you always want to ensure that they're completely 100% dry before storing them away. And the best way to do that is to make sure that that roots snap, or if leaves and flowers have that crumble quality. So make sure they're 100% dry. And then they just need to be stored in airtight containers out of direct light. Paper bags, Tupperware type containers that you can stack in your cupboards and grow your little medicinal apothecary. And label your plants and basically use them within a year. Leaves and flowers have about a year-long shelf life. Fruits and roots and seeds for about 2 years. So that applies to your culinary herbs as well. So it's great to do small batches, to grow small manageable batches and just use them as needed and replenish them every year. Any questions or comments about drying and storing your herbs?
We have a question from Aurora asking if you can use your oven in low temperatures to dry.
You can, yes, you can put it on the lowest setting and use that as well. Yes. Yeah, you just want to keep it out of direct sunlight, and then that gentle heat is very helpful, especially for roots and fruits if you don't have a dehydrator. Is there another one, Melanie? I saw the light blink.
Should you dry, can, or vacuum seal your herbs?
Oh, I just keep them airtight. So I would use Ziploc bags, for instance. So I might put them in paper bags and then seal them in a Ziploc bag, or you can get those stacking, plastic containers with lids. So as long as it's airtight, I don't vacuum seal mine. No, I don't. You can extend their shelf life by freezing them. So you could put them in airtight containers or bags in the freezer, or glass jars. Glass jars are good, yeah. And what happens here is you get further and further into herbal medicine, you end up creating your own little apothecary. So you start to clear out your kitchen cupboards to make room for a few herbs and a few more and then a few more. Before you know it, you're actually building, a whole set of shelves to store all your wonderful herbs. Yeah.
That's a true story.
Mhm.
And then
Heard it
there's
many
another
times.
question from Marguerite. Did you say no paper bags or use paper bags?
Oh yeah, paper bags are great, especially if you can seal them up tight. And you can seal them by putting, various paper bags, like smaller packages, well labeled, in maybe like a bigger sort of plastic container with a lid. Some people don't like their food or their herbs to touch plastic, so so you could put them in paper bags and then store those in larger plastic containers. Yeah, so paper bags are fine.
And Amy asks, are there consistent telltale signs that an herb has not dried properly? I notice a lot of color variation in some of mine.
Yeah. Yeah, softness. So you want that crumbly, snappy texture and even sound, So if it's limp and soft, like at all, then there's still moisture in there. So having that dry, crumbly quality would be, the best way to prevent that. I mean, you can check your bags as you go, like after you've stored them away for 24 hours. If you open, say, your glass container that they're in, and there's moisture in and around the jar, then that's a clue. Or if they're stored in Ziploc bags, then you would need to, take them out and start over again.
And I've noticed personally that from a color standpoint, if I've done them in my dehydrator on too high of heat, that the color is not right compared to drying naturally or drying on low heat. So I don't know if that might be the situation that you're seeing, Amy, but I've noticed that with some of mine, that I think I've kind of scorched them basically by drying them too high. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Savayda.
I see it. I receive herbs from other sources in addition to my own that I harvest, and I have certainly seen varying qualities with color, and that definitely is an indicator of quality, is the color of the plant. If they're, I've compared samples of rose and calendula, and it's very distinct, the vibrant, true, bright orange and red versus the pale, washed out coloring. So yeah, the color is an indicator of quality. And yeah, that's why I steer away from the dehydrators unless you're really good, have sensitive dials there to keep the temperature low. The natural method is great for leaves and flowers, especially. They're more delicate and they have the volatile oils, often like the mint families and even something like the goldenrod. They have a lot of flavor and volatile oils which escape with heat. So I would avoid the dehydrators for those plants especially.
That's great. Thanks. So we have two more questions. Nada says, I've dried herbs. When I take them out of the dehydrator, they snap perfectly, but then later on when I try to use them, they're more pliable and not as crisp. Are they not dried enough, or do they soften when not hot?
They're not dry enough. Yeah, they're not dry enough. Yeah, they shouldn't soften. Like I've got roots, like I've got like licorice roots and dandelion roots, whole roots, and like they snap. They're not meant to bend at all. Bendiness could be a sign of, just push it a little longer.
Okay, and speaking of roots, if the root is large, like elecampane, is it dried whole or in pieces?
Oh, great question. Yes, in pieces. Your roots and even like fruits will dry much more thoroughly and quicker if you chop them harvest. And, typically, to make your herbal preparations, it's more convenient to work with chopped, plant parts anyway. So yes, while they're fresh and easy to cut, do that and spread them out. And yes, you'll get a quicker, more thorough dry. Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
Great. That was the last of the questions on drying.
Okay, terrific. I'm just making sure I've shared everything I needed to on drying. I think so. Yeah. Okay. I am just going to switch. The light is dimming here, as you might see. I am just going to switch here for a moment and just move to another location. So bear with me. I can't see where to turn off my video here, so I don't need to. No camera. Anyway, I'm just going to move, get some light on. Melanie, can you tell me the time just so I know how we're doing?
Yeah, it's 7:50. 50.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. And we have until 8:30 together?
That's right.
Plan?
That's the plan.
Yeah, great. Okay. Okay, wow, we're losing daylight so quickly these days. Okay, so drying and storage. So we can then, as I said earlier, use those dried herbs in teas and various other preparations. I will say that using fresh herbs while they're available is a wonderful thing to do. So while we've got the wild weeds like the goldenrod and the dandelions, whatever we're cultivating in our gardens, there's so much potency in the fresh plants, so much, there's something to the water. Water holds vibration and it holds plant molecules. So the water becomes a vehicle for transporting the phytochemicals to our tea, for instance, and to our bodies. So I really love to use fresh plants. I mentioned just here that I believe, and there's others and research to show that water holds vibration, holds energy. And so when we're consuming the water, that was part of that plant makeup for its lifetime, its lifespan. That water holds holds medicine as well. So anyways, I just wanted to say that we still have months left with access to fresh plants. So as much as possible, make your teas right now with the fresh herbs and also add them fresh to your cooking. Yeah. But then I wanted to just go on to other methods for using your herbs, so other preparations. So there are, about a dozen or so that are easy for home medicine making. And I've listed some of the common popular ones there. Therapeutic teas, so we are going to detail that out, what it means to make a medicinal quality full spectrum herbal tea. Tinctures are the alcohol extracts of herbs, so we're going to talk about that briefly. Syrups, infused oils, and ointments. So we'll talk about each of these to a certain degree. As Melanie mentioned, I teach a year-long course in herbal medicine, so we will stretch these subjects over a year, once a month, really diving into the finer aspects of medicine making. But for now, I just hopefully will give you some inspiration and some ideas to get started with some medicine making right away. Yeah, so I'm going to then speak about herbal teas first. So I think teas are the most accessible form of herbal medicine. Most of us drink tea and are familiar with that. That's pretty accessible and familiar to most in most cultures. Well, so tea drinking is an approachable way to get to know plant medicines, and tea bags are inferior compared to using bulk herbs that are freshly harvested, so within that shelf life time span. So often, tea bag manufacturers will have their plant material around for a certain length of time, and then it might sit in the box. Those teas have expiry dates that last for years. And then once you open the box, see, that's probably with an ideal sealed box of tea bags. Once it's opened, air it starts to degrade the quality of your herbs. So whenever possible, make your herbal teas like in this photo with loose herbs. So either fresh loose herbs, that's my goldenrod tea, when they're fresh out of the garden, or even with your dried herbs. And that Bodum, that French press method, is my favorite way, because you can steep multiple herbs together in there, and you can do 2 to 4 cups at a time, and it's got that convenient press mechanism to strain your herbs down. So if any of you are taking therapeutic herb teas 2 to 3 cups a day, then that's what I recommend to my clients, to make it convenient. Make your one pot of tea first thing in the day or the night before, and then it's all ready to go. So you just have to pour it and drink it, and you don't have to consume your teas hot either, so they can be at room temperature. And so for therapeutic herbal teas, we're steeping or boiling, and that depends on the plant part we're using. So an infusion is a steeped preparation where you just let the herbs sit in the hot water for a period of time, whereas a decoction involves boiling the herbs on the stove for a set period of time. So leaf, flowers, and stems are what we would use to do infusion. They're lightweight plant materials. They don't need a lot of rigorous boiling to extract the medicines. Whereas it's roots, barks, seeds, and fruits and peelings from fruits that we need to boil. They need that rolling boil to extract that medicine. So that would be the main difference there. So for instance, when you're buying herbal teas and tea bags, you might have like some rose hip and some echinacea root and some fennel seeds all in that tea bag, but simply steeping them is not going to give you a therapeutic tea. You would want to take at least that tea bag, if that's what you're using, and boil that for 10 to 20 minutes to pull the medicine from it. And then general proportions for making your herbal teas would be roughly 1 teaspoon of dried herb or 2 teaspoons of fresh herb per cup. So you always double up the amount when using fresh herbs, because they are bringing moisture to their bulk, to their volume, so that takes up space. So the dried herb is more condensed in its strength. So that's a general rule. In some cases you might use less, and in some cases you might use more. But then you can sort of alter the dosage. So once your tea is prepared, then the dosage will vary depending on the herb. So that's the basic method, steeping or simmering for 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the herb. If you're using the aromatic herbs like the mints and that whole plant family, sage, holy basil, thyme, you want to keep it covered while steeping, because the volatile oils will evaporate and escape with the hot water. So very often it's those oils we actually want to keep in the brew, because they're also medicinal. And the dose really depends on the inherent strength of the herb. So we have the mild, moderate, and strong herbs. These just in nature, by their nature, they have lesser or more potency. So many of the herbs I promote for self-care and as sort of your 10 a day would be the simple, tonic, nourishing, regenerative herbs. And those are generally quite gentle, and thus you could take more of those. They're not harmful, they don't have any cautions or side effects, so you would use potentially 2 to 4 cups of some of those herbs a day. That would be things like nettle and plantain and burdock roots and violet, self-heal. There's a whole range of mild herbs that you could take quite a bit of. Whereas if we move along the spectrum, there are moderately strong herbs and then super potent herbs. So I recently did a herb walk and we met tansy. And maybe some of you know tansy. It's one of the wild medicines that are in full yellow bloom right now. And tansy is such a potent herb that we would only actually take like less than a quarter of a cup at a time of tansy tea, because it's so strong. It's too strong to take more, and less will give you the therapeutic value. You don't need to take more. So that dosing, depends also on who's taking it. So babies and children would take lesser doses, even elderly or more fragile folks would take less. And then depending on your constitution, I teach Ayurvedic medicine, and So we have the three constitutions that can, vary in terms of their dosing and how much they can take at a time, or the frequency of that dosing. Yeah, and then that brew will last 24 hours. So if you are going to do that method with the Bodum, then you want to drink it within 24 hours. It has a 24-hour shelf life. Okay, any questions about preparing herbal teas? We're all good, Melanie? No questions came through?
Here's David. One came through. Moonfeathers asked, I just read about infusing tea in the sun for 2 to 4 hours. Do you have any comments on that method? Thanks.
Sure. Sun teas. Yeah, I enjoy making sun teas. The heat is the key element. The physics, the physical reaction that warm water, speeds up that dissolving of the plant molecules. So a sun tea never reaches that, that of course that same heat coming out of the kettle, but it's all about solubility. It's all about how willingly your plant wants to give its phytochemicals to whatever solvent you're using. So in this case, water is the solvent. And so for some herbs and some phytochemicals in some herbs, they very easily give themselves to water. And so a sun tea with very, minimal chemicals quite easily. So I would say the sun teas are suited to some herbs and not to others, case by case. But sun teas are wonderful, especially, we can use the sun and make flower essences, for instance, by floating flowers in water and using the sun to activate. So I think the sun is a potent force and can activate sun teas. There's a whole finesse to that. So in some cases, like the flavor, like volatile oils, for instance, they respond very strongly to heat, even small amounts of heat. So the mint family would probably, be a really successful sun tea. Yeah. Yeah.
We have two
And
more.
they're beautiful and fun. Yep.
2 more questions.
Okay.
One person asked, referring to an earlier thing, just ask when you ask about the gardening, which picture of a garden was in your mind? Vegetables, flowers, or just herbs?
When I was probing the audience about their gardens? Is that?
Yes.
Oh, what was in my mind? It was pretty general. I was just curious, like gardening in general, who's got their hands in there and bringing to life plants. So it wasn't so specific, that question.
Okay. Another person asked, what's the best way to sweeten or improve the taste of bitter teas and herbs to make them more palatable without compromising their medicinal value?
Right. Yeah, I was meditating on that recently about how, you have a bitter herb, you can add sweet. It doesn't take away the bitter, it just adds more complexity to the flavor. Same thing with sour. I don't know what I was making that was so sour, but I was so I use honey mostly and maple, stevia powder, or even using stevia leaf in the mixture. Stevia doesn't interfere with blood sugar regulation. So it's easy to grow stevia, so you could dry that and add that to your blends, or add the fresh leaf to your fresh leaf teas. But yeah, in general, sweetening your bitter, for instance, bitter is a valuable flavor, and it's really hard. We can't negate the bitter flavor as much as we might want to try. It just gives more complexity to what you're tasting, so it doesn't harm or diminish the potency of the bitter taste, say the sour taste. Yeah, and so it's just more about your tolerance first for sweeteners.
A technical note, Savayda, you might want to speak a little bit slower because your bandwidth coming off of your voice means when it's not quite as clear when you speak fast. And you're
okay.
You I don't know, maybe you have a teenager in the house using a lot of bandwidth there right now, I think maybe. I don't know, or locally.
You know, that's
But-
possible. I'll be right back. Excuse me.
Did she say adding a sweetener to a bitter does sort of affect its?
And it
Get rid of
doesn't, no, it doesn't. She
properties
said
or
it doesn't. Doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it does
Especially-
not, correct.
Oh, and Mel, I jumped in because you hadn't responded. I don't, that's why I'm reading these questions.
No, that's excellent, David. My computer froze. It was perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay,
That's why we have two of us here.
I thought it might be a kid froze. Okay, so
Appreciate, yeah.
um, just out of curiosity, oh, your picture is already more crisp.
Okay.
But maybe that, I don't know. The last question we have up here is, can we define phytochemical? I think that means you. I can, but
Sure.
it's your show.
Yeah. Well, phyto, if we break down, phyto is Latin for plant. And so plant chemicals. So phytochemicals just are chemicals for plants. And these are biochemicals. These are naturally occurring, self-generated biochemicals that the plants themselves make from their environment. So it's not synthetic chemicals added. It's good stuff. It's another name for just plant molecules.
Thanks. That's
Yeah.
all the questions for now.
Okay, terrific. And yeah, I live in a rural setting with dodgy internet, so I'm sorry. I'll try and speak slow. That's a great meditative suggestion in general, David, that I slow down when I talk. So I will try and do that.
Yes, people who are English isn't their first language or anything like that, or if they have slow internet speeds,
Yeah.
speaking more slowly, more is communicated by speaking slowly.
Yes, good. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to come back to that previous question that the person asked about what I envisioned when I asked you about your gardening experience. And one thing that came to mind was that, ideally in some cases, we can achieve beauty, food, and medicine all in one plant. And and that's true of the herbs. For instance, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I happen to think that my dandelion is a beautiful thing, and it also, we can eat dandelion leaves and roots and flowers, and they're also medicinal. So that's one way with plants, is we can have that diversity of use from the herbs. They really are quite remarkable in their versatility.
Well said.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on from teas then to tinctures, and just describe briefly that tinctures are alcohol extracts from herbs. So there is phytochemistry, there is chemistry involved in making herbal medicines. There are in one given herb, like the plant yarrow, the wild yarrow that I'll mention later, it's got 120 known natural plant chemicals, phytochemicals in there. And given that complexity, different chemicals in that plant come through from different solvents. So some of the molecules in yarrow will give themselves to water, but others will hold back. They won't dissolve into water. You need something stronger, like alcohol, to pull those molecules from the plants. Some are fat soluble, so some actually will give themselves to oil, and we'll talk about infused oils briefly as well. So the thing about alcohol, it is the strongest solvent of the range. So other solvents, we already talked about water, oils, like fatty oils, like olive oil is considered a solvent, apple cider vinegar, honey, I know I'm missing a few, glycerin, alcohol. So these are all solvents. These are all, fluids that will extract medicine from the plants. So, and I say plants need various strengths. plants themselves and the molecules within the plants are variable in what kind of a strength or what kind of solvent is best suited. So tinctures, alcohol is the broadest spectrum. It pulls pretty much the, everything we want out of the plants. So that is why it's like this universal solvent and so effective. Tinctures are used very small doses compared to drinking a tea, and they have a shelf life of 50 to 100 years once you make a good quality tincture. So there's advantages to making tinctures, and we could spend 2 hours just talking about tinctures some night, but we have different strengths of alcohol too. So you could get like close to 100%, like 98% alcohol with certain licenses, and if you're in the US and such places, whereas if we go right down the spectrum, wine is 12% or so alcohol, and then vodka and brandy are about 40%. So certain herbs need only 25% alcohol, and some need 90%. So again, it's just knowing the chemistry of your plants and what you seek from the plant. And I'll give calendula as an example. Calendula is in one of my photos here. Here's calendula. Calendula is high in resin in the center of the disc, very high in resin. And to extract the resin from plants, we actually need 90% alcohol. So the resin in calendula is antifungal and antibacterial. So if that's what we want that preparation to offer us, then we need to use a 90% alcohol preparation. Whereas if we want anti-inflammatory and lymphatic properties from calendula, then a simple 40% alcohol tincture is sufficient. And in fact, even a tea is sufficient if that's what we're hoping to gain from that plant. So in many cases, water is sufficient, but some need a higher solvency. So tinctures, basically you chop them up and you steep them for 2 to 4 weeks in alcohol in a glass jar, and you give them a good shake and then strain them off. That's the basic method. There's the folk method of just, jamming a jar with herbs and putting vodka on there. And then there's the herb school method, or the sort of the more therapeutic method, which is to calculate the weight volume ratio. So how much plant are you steeping in how much alcohol? So, naturally, if you've got 100 grams of herbs steeping in 200 mils versus 500 mils of alcohol, the 500 mils is going to be a weaker strength, so you'd want to use more of it as for dosing. So as I say, tinctures, we could spend 2 hours, and I have many more slides to show you, so we won't go into great detail there, but the other factor is just in terms of straining the tinctures, to strain them off real well, not to leave any sediment or as little sediment as possible, and then to store them in clear jars in a dark place or in dark jars, because once they're prepared, like any herbal remedy, the sunlight will break down their potency. And I really love using fresh plants when making tinctures, but dried are also good. Is there a question about tinctures?
Yeah, we have a question. With tincture, if you can't get a strong enough alcohol for the purpose you need, would you then take a higher dose of the tincture instead, or increase the herb? How would you compensate?
Yeah. So great question. You couldn't compensate. So for instance, if you wanted a resinous rich calendula tincture and you didn't have access to 90% alcohol, then if you made like a vodka tincture with 40% alcohol, you wouldn't have the resins in there. So taking more of it, you still wouldn't be getting that from the plant. Other examples of that, where a higher alcohol preparation is best. So in that case, you might, maybe not be able to make that medicine for yourself. You may have to get that from a medicine maker who has access to that alcohol, that higher percentage alcohol. Like a lot of we herbalists have licenses to obtain that strength of alcohol for our clinics. So you might, whereas most herbs do well in vodka or brandy. The majority fall within the range of only needing 40 to 45% alcohol. So I would say like 60% or so of the herbs within our, our access here in Nova Scotia, you could get away with vodka or brandy. And if you go to the US ever, if you want to become like a tincture maker, always bring back as much pure alcohol as you can get, or if you go to Quebec, you can get like 95, and I've even found 98% alcohol in some states. So bring that home. If you got friends traveling to Quebec or the US, yeah, get them to bring you home that high proof alcohol for cases like that.
And one more tincture question, and I'm going to ask this one because I think anybody who makes tinctures probably, if they're anything like me, will run into this. You say leave them for 2 to 4 weeks. What happens when you leave your plant material in the tincture and all of a sudden it's 2 months later and you forgot to strain it? So how long can you actually leave the tincture?
Yeah, that's not a problem. I had someone who did my herb class and she had her steeping for 2 years. and yeah, so that was the record on that one. But it becomes, yeah, it's no problem to steep it longer. The point is it just becomes redundant. Like you don't need longer steeping, because once osmosis occurs, once those physical reactions occur, the alcohol will not take any more from the plant. It becomes stable. So it just stabilizes, and alcohol is a preservative as well, so it won't spoil. So longer is fine.
Great. So people don't need to toss your tinctures when you forget about them.
No, tinctures are very forgiving. Unlike infused oils, which is the thing I want to mention next.
And we're done with tincture questions.
Okay, perfect. So infused oils. So another solvent that you can use to extract medicine would be fatty oils, such as olive oil, grapeseed oil, sunflower oil. So it is somewhere around the strength of water, or a little bit stronger as a solvent. And very often infused oils are made for skin applications and for culinary uses. So flavored, herbal oils for your salads and such as well. So infused oils are not so forgiving. And again, we could spend 2 hours on just this. It's best to start with dried herbs for making infused oils. That would be my number one recommendation. When we add water to oil, they don't mix, and water would dilute the oil and lower its ability as a preservative. Whereas alcohol, if you're starting with brandy at 40% alcohol and adding fresh chopped up, calendula, even though you'll add a bit of water to that, it won't go below its preservative threshold, which I have to go back and say is 25%. So in order to extract a therapeutic tincture and for it to preserve that amazing 100 years that I mentioned, you need at least a minimum of 25% alcohol. So wine is not a good tincture making solvent unless you use it for short-term use. So anyway, so that's why, with alcohol, even adding, a little bit of fresh plant to alcohol won't reduce you below the 25% preservative marker. But with oils, it's more tricky. So starting with dried herbs, and then it's a similar process. The more we chop the herbs in our preparations, the better. More surface area is available. Solvents. You would steep it in the oil for usually 2 weeks is enough. Shaking it every day. Heat is helpful, but not sunlight. So you could put that oil in a paper bag or a pillowcase and put it out in the sun to get the warmth, and then strain it. And your infused oils will keep for a year in the fridge. And out of the fridge, you might just take small amounts, like what you need to maybe have on the counter, or, wherever you're applying your oils, and have small amounts, which will stay, for a couple months on the counter. So yeah, so that's, and then later on, you can transform those infused oils to ointments, salves, liniments. Lots of fun things to do with your oils and herbs. A few more slides. So I'm just sort of breezing over some of these preparations, and say you can delve into these in much more detail. I wanted to mention before I leave solvents, I just want to remind you that vinegar and honey and glycerin are other things that you could explore as ways to extract medicines from plants. So I taught an online herbal gardening series this past spring. It was a 4-week step-by-step series where we planned and every step of the way created little baby herbs and created a healing garden. And these were the 12 herbs that I personally believe are essential and accessible to anyone wanting to start their own healing garden. And I chose them because they have a diverse range of uses and that they're easy to grow in Nova Scotia. I've done so, so I know that they're easy and possible. So this is my short list of 12. You might notice that yarrow and St. John's wort are wild plants. They're typically thought of as weeds because they thrive and do well on their own. You know, they just have a life of their own. Nature takes care of them, but you can invite them into the garden and they are well behaved. Otherwise, the others are the intentional plants, the ones that we would start from seed or from transplants. So just these are just some of my favorites, and just to give you that maybe that inspiration as you think about next year's garden, if you have want to add some new ones, maybe what some of you already have. Melanie, was there a comment about that one or questions?
Can ointments have a longer shelf life than the oil?
Okay. If they're sealed and unopened, yes, like easily 2 years. If you add essential oils to both your oils and your ointments, then that will also have an antibacterial effect, which will preserve them longer. And by the way, an ointment is just when you add beeswax to an infused oil and make it a more solid form. So yeah, they can last unopened for much longer. But once they're open and we start dipping our fingers and things in there, it could be similar, about a 1-year shelf life. I chose those 12 herbs because I extracted sort of the main health issues that I see most often in my clinic and that I encounter, in my community: skin, digestive, nervous, and immune system needs. And so those 12 herbs, as you can see there, are lit up in sometimes all of those, and in at least 3 of those body systems. So that's how I selected those 12. You got to start somewhere. I just wanted to highlight a few medicinal weeds. Got to leave room for the weeds. Even in your garden space, I've got eyebright there. This one, eyebright, growing wild out here on the Eastern Shore where I live, and it's populating all of my lawns, including in my veggie beds and in my herb garden. I welcome it. I've got burdock growing in my loose soil, which makes it much easier to harvest. It's hard to dig burdock in the wild. Coltsfoot, some of you may know that as an early spring medicinal bloom. I just want to mention more of my favorites. Fireweed, the goldenrod, ground ivy are some herbs to keep in mind in the wild. And lastly, some other well-known medicinal weeds here: the dandelion, plantain, and yellow dog. So that's kind of a touch off into a different topic, which would be like the wild, like I mentioned, the 250 wild medicinal plants and edible plants in Nova Scotia. So those are some of them. As I say, some of them have room in the garden as well. And lastly, before we come back finish with questions, I just want to share that the first way to use herbal medicine is to be with herbal medicines. So that's where that quote comes in again. Just those quiet moments in the garden themselves are therapeutic. And we can learn directly from the plants by spending time with them and observing them, and even fine-tuning our perceptive qualities with our senses, our ordinary senses and otherwise. So I would encourage you, as a first step to getting to know a new plant medicine in your life, would be just to hang out with it, whether it's like that weed, that fireweed, growing in. So yeah, spending time sitting with the plants is a great way to get to know them and to benefit from the medicine as well. All right, I'm going to come back to the group and just see what closing questions or comments you might have. You want to unmute yourself and share your question? Oh, Marguerite, yeah, my dog, yeah, my dog's barking in the background. Yeah.
Do you have Labrador tea in your herbal store?
I do have some Labrador tea. Yes, yeah, which I wildcraft here in Nova Scotia. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Are you seeking that one, David?
A friend of mine is. I also have a friend who has terrible back aches and muscle pains and migraines. And maybe I need to talk to you about what might work. She doesn't like
Okay, and
regular medicines.
doesn't like them. Okay, yeah. Well, herbs can certainly, you know, be taken in conjunction with pharmaceuticals or on their own. They can be pretty powerful. I will say, I have a drop-in day every Wednesday at my herbal clinic from 11 until 3:30. And I'm located in the south end of Halifax in the wonderful local Council of Women building. It's one of our grand, historic, beautiful buildings in the south end. It's at Young Avenue in Inglis. So I'm there every Wednesday just to welcome, you know, just casual drop-ins to come in and exactly as you said, David, chat about your needs or your friends' needs. And I can sort of help direct your herb choices. That'd be one way to connect on Wednesdays.
Great.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions about this introduction to herbal medicine?
Nada asked if you have any books or podcasts or YouTube channel recommendations.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, so the two books that I would recommend, first off, if you're into foraging for wild plants or even to recognize those growing in your gardens that maybe you want to allow to grow in your garden, I would recommend the Peterson Field Guide of medicinal plants. That's literally, it's like there's a whole series of Peterson Field Guides, and then they dedicate a series to medicinal plants, and they've broken it down into western of the western area of our continent, and then central and eastern North America. So that's a wonderful plant for ID. And then a basic book would be Bartram's Encyclopedia of Herbal Medicine. It's my number one recommendation, Bartram's. It's an encyclopedia, so you can reference a plant, you can look up calendula, or you can look up headaches and get a whole list of dietary and herbal and nutrient suggestions to treat ailments. You can reference ailments or herbs, and it's very concise. And it's wonderful. Bartram's. To my newsletter, if you go to the Bloom Institute homepage, there's a sign up there, and I do try to get those out monthly with some educational and just supportive articles and such. And I often will reference other workshops that either I'm teaching or other herbal people are teaching. Look for herbalists. That's all I can say. Look for herbalists versus people who've dedicated their lives to herbal medicine. That would be my first recommendation. I have some favorites. Depends, some of them they specialize. Like Donnie Yance specializes in adaptogens and cancer. Amanda McQuaid Crawford specializes in in menopause. But anyway, so each herbalist has their specialty. Yeah. My drop-in hours, Marguerite, are 11 to 3:30 on Wednesdays, every Wednesday.
I have a
Any
question.
other comments?
I have a question. Have you ever noticed wild plants showing up that are remedies for whatever ailment it is that you're experiencing? Like one spring, I was really depressed, and St. John's wort was growing right next to the door that year.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, that's I have, and I've heard that from many others who've shared that same experience. And I've experienced it recently with impatiens flower. Impatiens is a flower remedy for impatience, and it's just showed up when I most need it recently. So it's interesting. So yes, that is a phenomenon that I've heard many times. Yeah, it's remarkable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just being able to recognize that, as you say, to have that recognition, that observing awareness of the plants around us. Oh, like that St. John's wort, or who is that just popped up there? To have that curiosity to lead you into, then making use of that volunteer who showed up in your life. Yeah, signs are always there. It's just being able to recognize them and stay open to them. Yeah.
That sounds a lot like what we're learning from the secret lives of trees and finding the mother tree, about the communication between the mother tree and the mycelium. And I believe it's a connection between all of life. And we just have to find the way to find the divining rods of our soul to connect with the earth and our world in the right way.
Yes, I think we're primed for that as an aspect of nature. I work with plant attunements and always encourage people learning with me to learn directly from the plant before I, put my input in there. And so that's easily done by spending time with the plants and almost opening up a conversation with the plant, as if you're meeting a new person. And they really do speak to us. Maybe some of you speak to your plants, but they will speak back in various ways. Yeah, it's a wonderful relationship to have. Yeah. With the trees.
Anyone else have a final question before we close? Well, I will say that we've had a number of, did I hear someone else want to talk?
Oh, it was just me, David. I just actually, I will say that because I have some direct personal experience having worked with Savayda. So before you close up, David, I've taken the year-long herbal class. I've done lots of walks, and Savayda does workshops on her website. I'm not sure if this came up yet either, but there's also an absolutely wonderful program for children. So if any of you have kids, my daughter did Savayda's kids program last year, which was just delightful. And I've done some walks, I've done private consults, gone into the drop-in hours. So I would just, Savayda, thank you. This was lovely, of course, but everything you do is lovely. And it's been such a wonderful experience learning from you in all of those areas. So I just wanted to say I recommend that to anybody who's close enough to go in and go on a walk with Savayda or take part in some of these. And you're doing an online course now, I believe, as well, Savayda. Is that right?
Yeah. For the very first time ever, I've adapted my year-long course to an online version, which starts up in early October. So that's exciting. And I'm doing an immune workshop, a 2-part immune resilience workshop in October online. I'm doing a plant families series this in January. So I've got a few other online options coming up. So yeah, if you go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, that's a good way to. And thanks for that, Melanie. Thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Better than I do.
And I know you had to do some of these online classes because of lockdown. We got stuck doing some things online. So I know that while in person is good, online works too. We learned lots online as well. So yeah, that's great. So yeah, so thank you very much. And and bloominstitute.ca if people didn't catch the website.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I'll wrap up now, and unless we have other people who want to gush about how much they've fallen in love with Savayda. I haven't heard anyone who talks about your Savayda that doesn't gush a little bit.
That doesn't, right?
Yeah. They all you just charm them. They fall in love with you. So and I'm sure the plants are the same. They're all in love with you, I'm sure. So we hope that all of you will have some love for Transition Bay and let us add your email list to our email list. Add your emails to our email list, because we will give you a very infrequent updates on programs we're doing. And I think they're the kind of programs that you would find essential in our changing world. We need to recognize that there's so much we have to do ourselves. The government is not going to suddenly stop the climate crisis. It's we need to learn how to take care of ourselves. And this is an essential learning, and there's many others too. So please join our list. Let us add it to what we're doing. Trying to quieten some distractions here, sorry. And we thank you all for coming. Join us again on transitionbay.ca. Look there for what for future programs. And thank you all so much for coming. Oh, and donate if you want to help us do these. Please donate. Bye. Oh, and this program is recorded, and it will be posted in the next few days to the webpage and probably to our Facebook page for Transition Bay. So please come look for it, and if there's anything you missed, it'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting, David and Melanie. Thank you. And it was always lovely to be with plant enthusiasts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Savayda. Bye.
Bye.